Morning, guys. Uh, Before we get started with today's lesson, just a couple of announcements. Your live sessions today are at the normal times. It sounds like the Core 2 live sessions, there were some issues with that yesterday. I think I have that problem resolved. If that ever happens to a core and you need to hop into the next core's live session to let me know, please feel free to do that. Today, we're going to focus on something very similar to what we did yesterday. Except today we're going to talk about how we can review and evaluate the solution information that you have found so far so that you can refine and improve your problem solution chart. So, your final improved, refined problem solution charts are due on Friday. So, that's a week from the original due date so that it gives you some time to make them stronger, um, build on your reflections, make sure that you're answering all of the relevant inquiry questions that you need to answer. So let's go ahead and get started. Please remember, I mentioned this yesterday and I've mentioned it before. It is not enough to just do your work when you're on Canvas. You have to submit it. If you don't submit it, I can't see it. So Canvas works differently than Google Classroom did. On Google Classroom, I could see your work whether you turned it in or not. That is not the case on Canvas. On Canvas, you have to submit it, or I just get a blank dot that says the student has not submitted his or her work. So every time you make changes, every time you make revisions, at the end of that work session, hit submit so I can get your new and up-to-date information. All right, so we are right now in this third phase of the inquiry process where we're starting to interpret the information that we have kind of collected. We're looking at whether or not the information answers and addresses the inquiry questions we asked when we set out on this research process. And if not, we're going to find out, are those inquiry questions still relevant and what other information do I need to find? And do I suddenly have new questions that I want to have answered? This again is what a problem solution chart should look like. So as you're improving yours and finalizing yours, make sure that you have over here on the left your title, and if there is an author, your author. This is not just a place for a hyperlink. It's okay to put a hyperlink there, but you also need to have your title and author. If your author is an organization like PETA or the World Health Organization, include that as well. Here you have information or evidence that may or may not be quoted. If you have page numbers, share a page number. The reason you're sharing page numbers here is because it's going to be easier for you or for me to go back and find that in your research. This column here, probably the most important, it's a place for you to paraphrase your findings in your own words to make sure that you really understand them, and then also to really reflect on why it's important or how it connects to your research or what it makes you think of. So, brain research shows that the more you can do this reflection, the better you understand your topic. So, today, what I'd like to talk to you about is that good researchers can determine their next steps by reviewing and evaluating the solution information and data that they've collected so far. All right, so I'd like you to watch me as I model my thinking about how I can review and evaluate my solution information and data so that I can decide what I need to do next. So we generated these solution inquiry questions way back on April 21st in our MTL. So that's the place where we're going to be looking to find these. So I'm going to think about two of my sources. I was homeless and hidden homelessness among America's high schools again, because I want to know, do those articles answer all of my solution inquiry questions? And if not, what's my next step? So, when I'm looking at my questions, some of my solution questions included: what laws protect homeless children and their right to an education? Laws are a really important thing to ask about. So, ask about that in your topic. If you're doing puppy mills, ask what laws exist to limit or prohibit the use of puppy mills. If you're doing designer babies or genetic engineering, what laws govern that? If you're doing breast cancer, what laws provide treatment options for people who don't have insurance? So be thinking about the legal system as you're looking for solutions if that's relevant to your topic. One of my questions was, what local Milwaukee organizations support homeless children and their ability to access education? Are there things like Bound for Success and Coalition for the Homeless in Milwaukee? What services must school districts provide to children and youth in homeless situations? Are school districts responsible for sharing meals or transportation or tutoring services? Um, how must schools support homeless children in terms of meals, transportation? These are the two big things I just mentioned. Providing school supplies, helping kind of mitigate or lessen the extent of the gaps in education of these children. Remember, if these kids are changing schools, some more than 3 times in the course of a school year, they're going to have huge gaps in their education. How are we supporting children for whom English is not the first language spoken? So, when I look back at my articles to see if these two articles answer these questions, here's what oopsie, sorry about that. Here is what I found. In terms of the laws to protect homeless children and their right to education, no, I did not have the answer to that. I had something about the McKinney-Vento Act, but that doesn't specifically speak to what's providing the right of a homeless child to an education. Did I find some information about local Milwaukee organizations? Yeah, I did. I actually discovered that Milwaukee does have a branch of Coalition for the Homeless and Bound for Success. Did I find out specifically what services school districts need to provide to children and youth who are homeless? I did not. Did I find out how we're supporting homeless children in terms of meals, transportation, school supplies? Nope, nope, nope. Did I find out anything about how are we mitigating the gaps of education for these kids? I did not. Did I learn about how we're specifically supporting children for whom English is not their first language? No. Did I learn a little bit about how I can help? Yeah, I learned a little bit about that. But I answered no to the vast majority of these solution questions that I generated 3 weeks ago. So now that begs the question, what's my next step? What is my next course of action? Well, I have to ask myself, are those questions still relevant? Do they matter? Does the answer to those questions matter? And if yes, if I say yes, those questions do still matter, what sources am I going to find to answer them? So I might now have to make a really specific Google search. I might have to literally search for um, how are school districts responsible for providing transportation for homeless students? How are school districts responsible for providing meals for homeless students? I may need to get really, really specific in my search for answers rather than looking for like more broad general information. I might even want to look at some non online articles. I might want to look at podcasts, TED Talks. Maybe I know somebody who volunteers at a homeless shelter I could ask. Maybe there are newspaper articles. So if your parents get a newspaper, online articles are fine, but consider using some other types of sources as well. I might even contact a homeless shelter to see if I can get any help from somebody there. So, this is really important. So, if you hear one thing that I'm saying, I want you to hear me say this. You are responsible for coming up with a minimum of two possible solutions to your problem. And then you have to find out, have these solutions actually been implemented? Have they been put into practice? Or are they still kind of in the idea phase? Are they still hypothetical? You're going to pick one of these solutions and it will become your call to action, the thing that you ask your audience to do. So remember, at least two possible solutions to your BayTalk problem. And then you're going to pick one that you really want your audience to kind of focus on. And again, in terms of your next steps, if you're still looking for information, consider things other than online articles. So, what I'd like you to do for your application activity today is I'd like you to go back to your My Thinking logs on April 21st, and I'd like you to look at your original inquiry questions for solutions. And then think about your research so far and ask yourself, does the research I've pulled so far answer these questions? And then you're literally going to type a yes or a no after each of those questions, just like I did in the mini lesson. And then think about those unanswered questions. Are they still relevant? Does the answer to those questions still matter to you? If the answer to that is yes, then where are you going to look for those answers. And then decide on your next course of action. Once you've decided on your next course of action, you can begin your closure activity, which is going to be very similar to what you did yesterday. You're going to go back to the very top of your My Annotated Research document, and you're going to respond to this prompt. Remember, we want a complete, detailed, thorough paragraph. Your heading is today's date and next course of action for solution inquiry. And then reflect on this. Now that you've thought about what your next steps are going to be for your solution inquiry questions, what steps are you going to take? Be specific. What questions still need to be answered? Where are you going to look? How are you going to narrow your search to find those answers? And remember that you're responsible for coming up with at least two possible solutions to your BayTalk issue. One of those is going to become your call to action, that thing that you're going to ask your audience to do. We'll talk more about that later. Right now, you just need to remember that you're responsible for two possible solutions. Okay? Again, this is going to go at the very top of your My Annotated Research document. When you're done with that, with the time that you have left with your hour of ELA, actually start on that next course of action. For all of you, one of those steps should be updating your problem and solution charts. That might be adding more information that answers your inquiry questions. It might be adding more detailed reflections or a more clear paraphrased version of that text evidence. And then if you still have time in that 60 minutes of ELA work, that's a great chance for you to do some of your reading and pre-jotting. So hope to see you guys at the live sessions today, and I miss you. Take care.